Since I'm a glutton for punishment, let's do one last part to this overall process in talking about TTP. So earlier we had done a full configuration parsing of a configuration. We had this following config, and we had parsed all the parts of it. We had extracted all the things that change out of this configuration. And we had generated a set of YAML variables. So let's look at what this looks like. So we had generated these YAML variables. So the output of that was as follows. I stuffed that into a file. I just basically redirected it into a file. I actually removed the extra level of nesting. So the output of this is a list wrapped in a list wrapped in a list. I just removed the two outermost lists with a simple edit and replace, which is like a one-line command in VI to just flatten that data structure. So it now is just a set of dictionaries. There is no more list wrapping inside of it. So we have these YAML variables corresponding to that. Now, I earlier constructed, and I hadn't shown you this yet, but I earlier constructed a full Jinja 2 template. So I created a Jinja 2 template basically saying, I want to regenerate this full configuration for Arista 1 using those variables that I just extracted. So I've constructed a Jinja 2 template that is going to use those variables that are stored in that YAML file, and we're going to generate a configuration file from them. And then we're going to compare the before and after, and they should be very close. So here you see my Jinja 2 definitions. I'm not really going to go into the Jinja 2, but I'm going through each section. I have my users section. There's some if-else in that. There's some for loops. Here I have my VLAN section, for loops, if-else inside of there. I have my interface section. I have a big long if statement in there because there's a bunch of conditionals that can possibly happen, and I have my static routes, and then I have my end of my configuration. Now I created some pretty small Python glue code program that is going to load those YAML data. So I'm going to load my YAML data using this function, load in the arista_vars.yaml. I am then going to use that arista.j2 Jinja 2 template, and then I'm going to basically use Jinja 2 templating, and I'm going to generate the full configuration. So we'll go Python. We're going to generate our full configuration from that YAML file. And then I am going to save it into this configs arista1.new. So we'll generate that full configuration. And then I'm going to diff arista1.new. And I will compare it to the original config, which is arista1.config, and let's see the differences. Okay, so the only differences are a set of comments, basically, that happen at the top of the file, which I intentionally removed because my generated config, I don't really need these comments at the top of the file. The only other difference is there's an extra comment at one line in my generated config. So you can see I've now went the full loop. I've used TTP to extract all the meaningful variables from a current existing config. I've then reversed the process and said, now I know the variables from this device. I can use that with the Jinja 2 template to regenerate my configurations. So you could think of this in brownfield situations where you're trying to move from, I have all these devices in the field, what is their known variables they're using? How do I create some sort of data store where I have all these variables represented? I could use TTP for that part. Once I have the variables represented in some way, then I could start thinking of using Jinja 2 to generate configs from them so that we could be using our automation system as the source of truth for our networking devices.